just share to my wall. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program House of Justice. My name is Gloria Ballason, your legal diva and your regular host. Today in House of Justice, we take a look at the topic palliative loot and national security. And I have with me today a very important guest who will speak to the issues. I am glad to introduce E.A. Jonathan Ichava, who straddles a career in economics, politics, and international development. She is the executive director, CISO, a graduate of economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and holds a master's in political management from the George Washington University in the USA. She's also had a career in the UNICEF and has served in Geneva, Switzerland, and Nigeria, respectively. Thank you for joining me on House of Justice, EA.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the invitation.
It's such a pleasure. And I have joining me from the Lagos end, Chinedu Okeke. He is a youth advocate, a public affairs analyst, and former editor of Urban newspaper. Chinedu likes to call himself the guy from Equilobia. Hi, Chinedu.
Hello, Gloria.
It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And the Executive Director, Kaduna State Bureau for Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment, Dr. Joseph Monday Megari, is also due to join us in this discussion. He is a consultant psychiatrist and head of department, Kaduna State University, and I'm sure he will join us shortly. So we're going to have him joining us from Zaria, I suppose. We have a lawyer, a senior lawyer and counsel at Emmanuel Toro SAN Chambers and Co. A very interesting speaker and someone you would love to listen. Rindy Dakun joins us from Plateau State. Do we have you, Rindy? All right, I guess we're going to have him soon. And right here in the studio with me, I am glad that I have Abdulaziz Isa Bawa, a public affairs analyst and someone who doesn't call a spade a big shovel. Thank you for joining me in House of Justice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's do a quick rundown of the issues. The palliatives loot. It seems like all across the state there was a coordinated action of loots of palliatives from Lagos to Kaduna to Plateau to Ogun to Adamawa, Kogi, Cross River, Benin, and on and on and on. Taraba is also there. And here's what we know. In Lagos, we had a loot at Maza Maza, and it is said to have gone on for over 8 hours, and rice, beans, yams, and other edibles were taken. The palace of the Oba of Lagos, Oba Rilwan Akiolu, was also attacked for palliatives, and we're told that the staff of office was taken. In Kaduna State, at Barnawa, precisely, there was, a loot in the house of a serving commissioner, and it also went on. There was also a break into the NAFDAC office at Narayi as well. In Jos, there is a report that there was a loot of palliatives at Bukuru, Jos South. We also have a situation in Adamawa State that is probably escalated, and the press secretary to the governor, Mr. Humwashi Wonosiku, had on 28th of October 2020 released a report of Executive Order 2 of 2020 authorizing a house-to-house search for items looted in government-owned and private storage facilities, and an indefinite curfew has been imposed on Adamawa. In Kaduna is just out from a 24-hour curfew as early as yesterday. And we could go on and on and on. But EA, let's hear from you. What do you make of this palliatives loot and the coordinated action?
Well, I think that, you see, coming off the back of NSAS protests and the narratives around it being because of NSAS and all of that, I personally think that there were a group of people who were trying to create havoc and to discredit the NSAS protest and also take away from the very serious issues around NSAS and the killing of Nigerians.
Yeah.
Let me just say first and foremost that it's very unfortunate across the entire country that we've shifted attention, it seems, from the Nigerian precious lives that have been lost to police brutality, military brutality over the years, and you know, recently what's galvanized the protest. And we're more worried about palliatives being, quote unquote, as they say, looted. Now, in terms of the coordinated actions, I think the sense we get, or I get, and other analysts get from just seeing is that, number one, how come all the information came out at the same time?
Yeah.
Number two, who would know where these things are located? Two possibilities: either politicians looking to stir up trouble and getting more than they bargained for, much as in the same vein they were sending out what Nigerians that the press is now calling hoodlums, but they're Nigerian citizens, mostly disenfranchised, you know, unemployed, used normally by these politicians. They were sending them out to attack and kill legitimate, peaceful protesters during the protest. It is interesting to note, I'll come back to the palliative issues, but it's very interesting to note that the government needed panels and all sorts of things to deal with the issue of Nigerians being killed by security agents. But when it came to being able to swing into action very quickly, I mean, things that they should have been doing with the extrajudicial killers, they're busy all over the place using it to track down, for goodness sake, bags of Indomie and bags of rice. So I think it's extremely shameful. I would say on the palliatives and the looting that went on, coordination, I believe that it was released by mischief makers. It got out of hand, way beyond what they expected. And I think, again, the governments of Nigerian citizens are very far removed from the reality of many Nigerians. We forget we have become, under this administration, the poverty capital of the world. We've been inching towards this for a long time. We forget also that we have a huge youth bulge. I remember some years ago, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, when she was president when she was at the World Bank, warned about the consequences. What thing is actually coming together, as she did, where she warned about the high levels of unemployment, creating a feeling of hopelessness and desperation. And we're seeing that playing out now. Our population continues to grow. People are unemployed. We have high levels of unemployment, almost 50% or 47%. So all these things, unfortunately, have culminated into this very volatile situation. So if people hear there's food, they will go there and get the food, especially as they believe that it's their own share. So I've even hesitated to call it looting. Although they were meant to be distributed, people will shoot me because they will say I'm encouraging criminality. Not at all. But people also need to understand and walk in the shoes of people who are hungry, who need food, who have been denied, people who have been dying. We heard about people dying from hunger, and we keep hearing there's hunger in the land. I think we saw real hunger in the land as we saw people going to take these food items that they believed to be theirs. Sorry, I'll just lastly end that there were some things, of course, some things went overboard. There's always criminality, and that's very unfortunate. People looting from medical stores and, of course, taking things they shouldn't have. But also, we need to interrogate also what things we're doing. A House of Assembly person saying, a member of the House saying that he was keeping them to distribute during his birthday as if it's his private property. He should also be prosecuted. and then also other goods turning up in Kano that were meant for Benue. That has been discovered a while ago, but nobody has been punished for that. So it's very unfortunate, but it's just a whole culmination of all the different things that have gone wrong over the last few decades of this democracy we find ourselves in that is not really delivering the goods for Nigerian people.
Okay, I think I would start with Lagos before I stream out. Uh, Lagos, for a long time now, hoodlums have tormented Lagos for many years. And for most of the time, the government has actually ignored this trend. And you hear of people being robbed in traffic, all those reports, they don't really bring much to the table. So the hoodlums feel very comfortable doing this. So now stuck up in their houses and waiting for an opportunity, the NSAS protest seemed to present that opportunity, especially the end of it, the way and manner, the manner in which the government handled it. It was like a keg of gunpowder, and they just brought their lighter and lit the thing up. So when it exploded into chaos, it did surprise most Lagosians that hoodlums stormed different places. The thing you're hearing about, because that's the one the government is really crying about, is the palliatives. But almost every business suffered a blow all around Lagos. So the people that went for the palliatives could even be forgiven, because some others were more ambitious than that. They went into stores. Thank God I stay very close to the monkey village where you're talking about. Around here, are not really bothered about what happened in that warehouse, because their businesses also suffered big blows. We saw crowds of more than 500 coming out from ghetto areas, permit me to say. And these people marched uninterrupted into estates. They tried to get into ShopRite in Amur here, and luckily for the owners of that place, the security officials there were able to repel them. But we saw these things building up towards the end of the NSAS protest. Obviously, those of us that went for the from time to time noticed that amongst us, we had those people who were not genuinely out to function as protesters, so to speak. We saw people that, we saw various people with various goals. So the fact that the government failed to provide protesters with a much needed security, I think they are the primary, it's on their lap that the ball first fall, because if you look at protests all around the world, you see that when the protesters are in that number, and they are all, we were not against the whole police. The major protesters were actually asking for the end to SARS. You had other, there are so many other police departments that have sent out some of these people to go to, and the major point of protest where you could count them. You had Ija, you had Amuo, you had Lekki, a few others. So it's not like it was out of control. It was every single street, and they didn't have enough to police the situation. But they failed to do that, and this had to come up. And when it came up that morning, when it was building up, I think the government wasn't really proactive. So they kept looting that place, and social media, which the government seems to be criticizing a lot today, was helpful for people who would, who, if they really wanted to stop that, would have liked to use such information. In the morning, by 8 in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, people had said, talking about it. It's something is happening, and it's seeping into social media, WhatsApp, everywhere. So if the government really used that tool, they would have stopped it halfway in, because the warehouse was so full, and they kept looting that place for many hours. So I suspect that the government wasn't really interested in doing what was right. It just most of them just want to come out now and cry. So it's a shame. It's a shame.
to fill in the right information in the right space, the wrong information will fill in the space. And if the wrong information fills in the space, then as far as that situation is concerned, that is the right information. And people won't be wrong to deal with it in that manner. So we must realize that governance is service, and we're going back to those same things that we have agitated all our lives. At what stage will we realize that to lead actually means to follow?
Wow. Well, let's look at what the human loss is. We'll talk about the loss at the Lekki toll gate and all that is happening there. But then in terms of those who have lost their lives just in trying to get these palliatives, this is what we have. 3 women in Gwagwalada in Abuja were trampled to death. Stampeded to death. In Kaduna, there's a report that 1 person lost his or her life. In Taraba, we have 6 people whose bodies were moved to the mortuary after hoodlums broke into a warehouse in Jalingo. In Benin, we have 1. News has it that we have at least 14 Nigerians who lost their lives just trying to get these palliatives. When we think about the collateral damage of this, I mean, is it worth it? Is it worth it that we'll lose this number of lives just for people trying to get the food that they should have gotten without this stampede?
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to be a bit historical about this. Let me start by saying, going social first. We're in a country where we have remote causes of this problem and what we call immediate causes.
Okay.
When we look at it, this society is socially structured in the way that we have been indoctrinated to certain extents. Certain values that are not supposed to be our values. All of us can actually look back. The educated class that is actually supposed to teach the ones that were not opportune, we have actually imbibed this because of this indoctrination, mind. What we have today is that the use of this education dysfunctionally. First, the remote causes are, over the years, I'm a disciple of history. Let me start from 1869, to the formation of Nigeria, 1906, 1914, up to this time. You cannot actually look at Nigeria and say there are no plans, theories on ground. But what have we done with those theories? Nothing. We copy project, we price them, things like that. So the issue is not actually on not having the plans or the laws. The issue is here first. The causes of this first are so numerous that not using what we have actually penciled down to do. 1, no transparency. Some of us never even know that they were palliative. We're even talking about co-carving. This is maybe just less than 30% of what actually was supposed to be on ground.
Yeah, and we're told that COVID was from the private sector.
Yes, through the CBN. Okay, what happened to free feeding program that families were supposed to be fed? I think it will have taken certain greater percentage that one will have to.
Yeah, but the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs has said that she personally took those items to every state, and she's sure that every state got the palliatives.
Okay, I just told you I'm a disciple of history. What happened to transparency? Why don't you publish the names of those who distribute these items to? Then let the communities actually hold them responsible. I'm ashamed as I'm sitting here because my part is involved. And I'm just discovering this. I have not seen the person I want to see him, so that we will see ourselves and start talking. Why don't you publish these names? A chairman, a local government chairperson was actually complaining on the media that she never even knew that something like this was actually distributed. What type of government are we running? This is first. The second, people are saying hoodlum. Let's start with the government. I want to actually call it the way it is. You don't say, when I was a teacher, maybe 19 years when I'm here, I know students used to call me Mr. Legitimacy, but they never called me by my face. It was like saying, Bamala Abdul Aziz Kezwaba, Mr. Legitimacy is the one coming. When you exchange that SAS with SWAT, this prolonged this very strike. protest, I mean, if they are actually taking the right thing, look, even if they have the intention of forming SWAT, that was not the right time. You see, these things actually aggravated this very protest, that it took long, and some among us, I've told you that some of us are using this education dysfunctionally. We organize people, go down there, do whatsoever we will do, because the government is going to see us at the back door, through the back door, probably. Some use this advantage to make sure that talks infiltrated that very protest. We have many videos flying. You don't have to be an analyst to know that this thing was actually planned. The infiltration was actually planned, and who is going to benefit from this at the end of the day? Let's be clear about this. The authorities will benefit. Probably. I don't want to go that deep, but I know that Nigeria has a fundamental problem, and that fundamental problem is I am a northerner, pure northerner. And I know my background. I have a background whereby I was told to rule, the Arab call it Mulkiya. Once I am the leader, when I say yes, it stands. So coming from that background, most of our leaders are not that educated. We know how we were taught. When I was a kid, I was taught how to have those that were actually attending Western education. You remember those things? These were derogatory songs compiled to discourage those that were attending Western education schools. And even those that, let me tell you, there are doctors in this country, there are professors in this country, when they tell you something, you will sit down and you cry for Nigeria. Because certificate, as far as they are concerned, is for what? To earn whatsoever they can. So the fundamental problem is actually rooted in our culture first. Why did this thing actually prolong? Strike was going on. Northern governors were actually dividing the opinion of the people. Well, the governor of Kwara State actually led those protesters, to police headquarters. His colleague, Northern governors, led by one Samuel Alon of Plateau State, was there telling people that no, for the North, SARS should not be what? That prolonged this thing. We should tell the government this is
and
what
the question
happened.
we continue to ask is SARS in the North different from SARS in the South and in the East?
Absolutely, because I've actually journeyed to the South. Hardly you miss 500 meters without seeing what? Police checking point. If you move from here, Sokoto is my second home. Moving from here to Sokoto, there are no more than 5 what? They are not even up to 5 what? Checking point.
Yeah.
I know of 2. If you move that direction towards south, you will meet more than 100. So there are differences. These things still go back to what we call divide and rule. Why different treatment? Let me come back.
So just so we can tie that together, is it possible that we could have had an NSAS protest that was coordinated and tied around the same issue? Because I know in Kaduna there were protests, in Jos there were protests, in states around the north there were protests. So were they all protesting the same thing?
Let me actually bring it down this way. Socially, those with Western education are mostly not northerners, or those that are using this private-driven economy. If you look at those that went on protest, I was at Stadium Roundabout. I saw them. Looking at them, you know the types of people that are there. Police, these SARS have a trend of abusing those they see with dreadlocks, those they see with certain dressing. They don't even understand. They don't even know that these
certain
are people
dressing
that are,
people who
most
look
of them
good,
are
or those who look haggard.
Move to. There was a day I was in Galingora. Here, I live just there, just close to what? Strikeforce.
Yeah.
They have these national team players. I mean, they are too. When you see them, you may think they are just drug addicts. These are international. These are players that are playing for national team. But the police will look at them because of their dreadlock, because of the way they dress. They now harass them. There is a trend.
Yeah.
So that trend, when they come down, no, they don't see these boys with what? Found with dreadlocks. These boys are successful people. The notion The way we look at culture, the way we look at development is actually part of the reason,
The problem.
the problem.
All right, back to what happened at the Lekki toll gate on that Black Tuesday, Chinedu. You were part of the protesters. Did we
Yes.
have people killed at the Lekki toll gate, as far as you know, or not? Because we've had a lot of stories. The governor of Lagos State coming out to say, oh, people weren't killed. And people
Okay.
saying we cannot find some people. We need to
Okay.
know if there are Nigerians that were killed. So tell us about it.
Okay. So sincerely, I was in the I was at the Amuwo protest ground, which was at the Apple Junction, the inward side of mile 2. So if anything had happened at Lekki at the time, the information we were getting at the time was from social media. And at a point, I had to tell my friends and people that were there too. I said, I think we should step in. Words from people on the other side seems to point to chaos. And I think it's best we go in case the soldiers are to come here. I think that was a smart decision because after we left, we started hearing a lot of noise, and later we realized that hoodlums took over the place and started destroying everywhere. And at that time, I was thinking it was inspired by what happened at Lekki. So I quickly went to my Instagram. I do follow Tunde Ednot and some other people, and all of them had said we should go to the live Instagram account of a certain DJ. And we did that. Most of us, most people I know did that. And we saw this lady narrating everything. And we saw in the live video that what she was narrating was not far from the fact. It was happening there and then. The soldiers were shooting, the people were running. If you are employed to protect the people and you cause that type of chaos, even if the people die in a stampede, I think you are liable. You're supposed to be responsible for the deaths of such people, but you hold a higher responsibility to protect them. So, however, people died or lost their lives or got injured there, the soldiers were responsible. And the fact that they came out to deny their presence, that is the military, came out to deny its presence at the ground and later started to turn the story around, it points to something very fishy. If real independent investigators are to visit that place and investigate properly, we might find that the claim, that that particular claim that the soldiers took the bodies away might be credible. We've heard of such things happening before now. So I wouldn't be surprised. But for me to tell you that I really know somebody that died is untrue. But I don't think it's far from the truth. And I think I've watched a video of a lady in London who seems to confirm that her son died and his friends were able to retrieve his body before the soldiers were able to take it away. So I think before we can ever talk about this matter, independent investigators that do not listen to the government, would not align itself with the people, the protesters would have to get involved. And whenever you see the government in Nigeria and its military touching up stuff like this, you know that there's actually something to hide. That's what we're trying to find out. So we're in the dark, just like you are, Gloria.
Yeah.
Most of us.
And it,
Gloria, may I speak on that? Because I was
yeah.
stuck. Sorry, please hold.
Hello, EA. I think you have muted yourself. You need to unmute so we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh yeah,
There we go. Thank you.
Now you're coming through. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So I actually was stuck in Lagos, and happened to be at a good number of the Lekki protests.
Okay.
I was actually there on the day before the shooting.
Okay.
And have followed very closely a number of those things. I think one, all the evidence points to the government lying to us. Two, the military lies, and the military Nigerian army, unfortunately, are not far away from each other. If we recall, a few years ago in Kaduna there, the military denied killing the Shiites, a number of Shiites. They just said it was just a few. The way we demean and devalue Nigerian lives, we will say even if one Nigerian died, it's one Nigerian too many dead. But we saw that, and we've seen them constantly deny things. So when they were denying being first at the site, it wasn't a surprise to people who have constantly watched them or observed them. Also, the Amnesty International came out to say they had evidence. Now, they're still doing their evidence gathering, they're still doing their fact finding, but they actually came out to say that they have evidence, or they have enough evidence to believe that at least 12 people were killed there. And today they've released a timeline, and they've released videos and different evidence showing that army was deployed, and that they went there and there were live shots, live ammunition fired. So with the Lekki shootings, again, it's the character. I will say across Nigeria, one of the things we need to understand unites all of us, whether it's the North, the Middle Belt, or the South. One of the things that unites all Nigerians is this collective oppression of the Nigerian people by the Nigerian states. It's happening in every single state from Abia to Zamfara, where a policeman can just shoot you and he will tell you, I will kill you, and nothing can happen. We see it all the time. The soldiers come in, do as they like. This time around, they were able to get away with it because, they were not able to get away with it because there was video evidence. And then, of course, they're so used to doing these things and not having any consequences, or not facing any consequences, that for goodness sake, you come to a place like Victoria Island, you drive down a highway where there's diplomatic community living there. There's the mobile residence where expatriates live. And not far from where they live, you shoot. And they're telling you, there was even a German journalist who said she was there. They were shooting for hours.
Wow.
And shooting live ammunition. Wow. So the other question, and the other thing we need to begin to interrogate, is why on earth is the Nigerian army, the Nigerian police, going around shooting live ammunition at unarmed citizens? What happened to rubber bullets? What happened to water cannons? What happened to tear gas? What has happened to those things? Is it that they have stolen all the funds? The senior officers of these people, have those funds been diverted? What happened? How come all they ever do when they come out to work with Nigerian citizens who are not enemies of the state? These are the citizens that pay taxes, that pay these people. All they ever have to confront Nigerians with are live bullets. Nobody does that anywhere in the civilized world. You know, so those are some of the questions we need to begin to ask. So when it comes to the Lekki one, I am very thankful that we now see the stories are changing. The governor first came out the day after, said there were no fatalities. Then a few days later, he said, then later on he said, oh, one person died. Now it is 2. Now they're having some debates on the State House Assembly today, and somebody's saying, oh, they thought 100 people died, it's only 2 people. Even if one person died, the Nigerian army, the Nigerian government should be held responsible. And there should be an inquiry, a proper one, So we're glad that some of those investigations are ongoing. I think it should be noted that for the UN Office of Human Rights, led by Michelle Bachelet, who herself is a former president of Chile, I believe, for them to issue a statement so quickly denouncing these killings. The UN does not issue statements lightly. Means they have some evidence. And if I were the Nigerian government and I were the Nigerian army and the Lagos state government, I would stop lying to the Nigerian people and either keep quiet or wait for or cooperate with Nigerians to get to the truth of this matter. These killings have gone on for too long. Even as we're talking now, we understand in River.
Hello, E. I think that the connectivity is getting jealous at your end. We're losing a few things, but we hope that you will get that thought out as soon as we can have you back. But I turn over to Rindy just before we go on break. Let's look at the demands of the NSAS to see if it has actually even been met. Yeah, hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to my network. It just kind of flipped over. It flipped over to another network without my realizing.
Oh, I'm sorry about
that. So,
but
bottom line, I think, I don't know where you lost me.
I think we followed you up to the point of saying that if you were the Nigerian government, you would stop lying and you will face up to the facts.
We would face up to the facts and speak the truth and use this as an opportunity to begin to bring about justice for the many Nigerians that have died. And if I was the Nigerian president, I would sack the people who are in charge of these bodies. Whether it's the security
but you know, another question will be who ordered the killings? If you have a commander-in-chief.
Well, the thing with Nigeria, we need to understand what it means to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
There's a chain of command. So for me, the first person who is primarily responsible is the president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari. He's the one we should hold responsible. Now, it's up to him to tell us who ordered the killings. If he didn't, did the chief of army staff go rogue? Or is it the commander of the battalion down here that went rogue and ordered? If that is the case, they should do the investigation and sanction whoever did. The questions around who ordered the killing, who didn't order the killing, it's like in a house now. Who is responsible for things that happen in the house is the father and the mother, right? In our case, they like to call themselves our fathers. So President Buhari is the Nigerian father. If under his watch, Nigerians were murdered by the army, which has been happening for a while, then they should own up and he should fish out whoever is responsible. If not, we will hold him responsible as Nigerians. We should. He's the president.
Well, speaking about where the buck stops, but back to the NSAS demands. The protesters put out 5 demands, and just so that we don't skirt around the issues and ensure that these demands are not met, and then we move up. The 5 demands were: they wanted an immediate release of all arrested protesters, justice for all deceased victims of police brutality, and appropriate compensation for their families. The third being setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within 10 days. And then in line with the new Police Act, they wanted a psychological evaluation and retraining that will be confirmed by an independent body of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. And the 5th being, they demanded an increase of police salary so that they are adequately compensated for their job of protecting lives and property of the citizens. Typically, when it comes to protests in Nigeria, it seems that the timeline for a typical protest is 1 week. The government expects that after 1 week, something must give. It's either they bow to pressure or they are sent back home or something. Now, looking at these 5 demands, have these demands been met? Because this was the root issue. And if it hasn't been met, what should we be doing at this point in time?
Okay, let me say something by way of us being human beings wanting to learn every day. I want us to all realize that these protests that just happened, I think all of us were students of the protest. Both the citizens and the government were students of the protest. So some way, somehow, I don't think whether the citizens or even people who started the protest didn't know the magnitude it was going to carry. Now, the first demand of the immediate release of protesters, I believe it was a function of the protest, because when the protest started and then in the beginning of it, of course, the normal reaction of a Nigerian the government of Nigeria to any protest is to begin to clamp down on the protest. Because even the police themselves did not even understand it in the beginning, that at the end they were going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this NSAS protest. Because the NSAS protest started with the demand, with the mindset that at the end of it all, we all wanted better police for the country, for ourselves. That is, of course, why one of the demands is an increase in salaries for the police. So the immediate reaction of the Nigerian state was that of apprehension through the security agencies, who, even if they look at the demands perfectly well, will realize that it was even for their own good. So it took about a day or two before the police realized that at the end we are the biggest beneficiaries of this protest. If our salaries will be improved, our working conditions will be improved, it means we're better off for it. It was at that moment that you saw that the police was very willing, in my opinion, to give them all that security and guide them through the protest, and that because it was upon that realization that that happened. Now, on the other side, the demands was to abolish SARS. Of course, in a very normal characteristics of the Nigerian state we have come to be used to, went ahead to make a proclamation. SARS has been disbanded. Whether whether or not the IG understood the implication, but as I told you, everybody didn't have experience of this. Even the IG underestimated the magnitude and the power of the protest. That is why he woke up the next day and said he had created SWAT. He was still operating in the normal thing happening in Nigeria, that after all, if I say this, they will take it that I have done it. But he underestimated it and woke up with on the third day realizing that this proclamation of SWAT or whatever he chose to call it wasn't going to end the protest. The protest was more deeply rooted than that. It was more or less institutionalized. Now, to that extent, that by word of proclamation of ending SARS, you would say that the demand for ending SARS was met by word of proclamation. But the people needed to see more. The people needed concrete steps, concrete actions. What were they going to do? Now, I think this thing was about, let me not mix up the dates. I think it started about the 12th day of October. Then I think by the 13th, the SARS was said to be being prescribed. Then I think by the 14th, there was talk about SWAT. Then, of course, the protest persisted. Then 2 days later, of course, the National Executive Council went ahead to say every state should go back and set up the Judicial Commission of Inquiries that we're seeing coming up. I think that happened about the 15th of October or thereabout.
And that in itself, just not to break your stream of consciousness, but that in itself, raises questions. We've had presidential commission of inquiries as far back as 2018 that had 20. I attended the one for 2018, the presidential panel, the Tony Ojukwu presidential panel. That report has not been released. There were so many others before it. Now you are asking, or rather the government is asking the state government to do the work for the federal parastatal, something that is in the exclusive legislative list. How are we sure that what the presidential panel couldn't do, the state panel will be able to do?
You see, I think in releasing that statement, they rooted their arguments in law. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to be misquoted, but I think they rooted their arguments in law, and it is in itself a position that as practitioners, we have held divergent views, you understand? But I think the government rooted its position in the fact that there are several judicial authorities that have come to fore now that have said the president does not have powers to institute a judicial panel of inquiry. That is where they rooted their argument. Whether or not that argument is plausible is a different thing entirely. Now, they have said, go back to the states, and these are the composition of the committees. Whether rightly or wrongly, in their thinking. They have met the second demand of saying a commission of inquiry. But of course, the whole of this thing that has happened, the demands by the NSAS movement and the reaction of the government, brings to fore a fundamental thing, that there's deep mistrust between the people and the government. To the extent that a mere proclamation of ending SARS did not meet the demand as far as the protesters were concerned. Rightly or wrongly, putting a judicial commission of inquiry still did not meet the demand as far as the protesters were concerned. In the psychological, in fact, sorry, let me go to that one. A day after the IG disbanded the SARS OB, he said all former SARS officials were to report in Abuja for psychological and whatever evaluation. You see, if you look at the reaction of the government, since they have never been proactive, they've been reactionary. They were trying to package it in a way that it looked like it met the demands of the NSAS protesters. But of course, there is already this deep-rooted mistrust between the Nigerian people and the state. Why? Because over the years, all we have had to hear is people say words, as you rightly noted, different commissions of inquiry that have not brought any results, different panels that the white papers or the recommendations are littered around and they have become fossils in different shelves of the Nigerian state. And nobody seems to think that at some point, even if we are not going to implement all of it, let us at least pick one thing and start. It is a starting point. So you see, even if the government prides itself to say, yes, you made demands and we acceded to it. After all, if you go on our normal media, our electronic medias, apart from this one we are today, you will find out that they are trying to justify the fact that they actually conceded to the demands. So to my mind, I think that they paid lip service to acceding to the demands of the NSAS protesters because they actually did not even understand, or rather they underestimated what the demands were and how would I call it, how sad and how angry the Nigerian citizen was.
So what could they have done differently? I mean, the Nigerian government, a part of their concern is that they had asked to see youth leaders, and they said they didn't have anybody stepping out. They took these other steps, and it looks like the issue about the trust deficit did not allow for communication to happen. So what could they really have done differently?
Seriously, Gloria, I'll tell you something. A day before, I think some days ago, I had cause to discuss with some of my younger ones, much younger than I am. And I told them, I said, yes, as I started this statement, I said, the protest was such that it was a learning process for everybody. Whether you being a citizen or you being the government, you understand? Whether you being the police, it was a learning process. And the truth was that the protest was driven so much by all the things, all the wrong things that have been happening in Nigeria. But yes, as you rightly said, the protests had people who came to add their voice to it, but actually it didn't have clear, defined leadership, to my mind. Even the Tunde Ednot that my brother here says he follows, you understand, at some point was trying to run away from it, saying, I'm not at the center of this.
Yeah, Segalink
said, I'm not at the center of it. So you see, whether or not the government is rightly holding on to that or they're just using it as a way out, it's a different thing. It's an argument for another thing. Yeah. But yes, there was no, for us, when the protest started, I'm sure those who gingerly didn't know it was going to get to this magnitude. If not, they would have identified some few persons. I said, when it is time to discuss, because I keep on saying, and I've told people who care to listen, is that even if we had protested for 2 years and all this violence didn't happen, at the end of the protest, it was going to end with a discussion. And when it was time for discussion, you needed to pinpoint those who you were comfortable with to discuss. Even now that we're talking, the Lagos State panel is saying that they have given opening for 2 or 3 of the young people to come on board, and they're still not getting anybody. Yes.
No, sorry. Let me, sorry, I'll interrupt there. They have 2 people. They've attended, they have 2 people. They had a voting process. There are 2 people on that panel that represent the youth. And they attended the first hearing. So I just wanted to update on that.
Okay.
All right, Chinedu, before we go on a quick break, because by the time we're back from the break, we need to speak to solutions. This is our country after all. But Chinedu, do you think that we had a situation of missed opportunities? Rindy here in the studio said that uh, this protest was a learning curve. And just looking at it from my own end, you know, there's a lot about this protest to be proud of. Just if we want to detach, have an out-of-body experience from the protest, if I may say so. We had a situation of young Nigerians showing innovation, showing care and compassion, you know, organizing, and then you had the period where the government said, okay, step out. Uh, do you think that the young people lost an opportunity of engagement at that point in time?
Yeah, I think everybody lost an opportunity to sacrifice. Because people, like he said, everybody was learning something new. Everyone was learning something new. Even people like us that were there on the ground, we didn't know what completely the protest would end us. We just had an idea that this is what we wanted, and people kept bringing. You should have looked at the placards. You should have seen the messages. They were limitless. People suggested so many things. People said a lot of things. People pointed towards a lot of issues, and the government. Because I was telling my friend the other day, I said, if the government had looked at this thing and had picked out a scapegoat, just one scapegoat. Yeah, I wouldn't say, maybe you don't say the IG of police, you just find somebody that is responsible for this SARS team. And then when if you even sacrifice the person to the youth and you say, hey, I'm relieving this person of his duties, or I'm doing that. I think that would have pacified the youth. If you had looked into that protest, you would have seen that a lot of people made sacrifices to build it. They made a lot of sacrifices to build that protest, to get to that point, because everybody was feeling the same thing. We saw videos of fathers that had lost their children to SARS. We saw, you heard people giving testimonies. So that anger was building up. How do you pacify people who are so angry? You make a sacrifice somewhere. You sacrifice your pride. You calm down. If it's the service chiefs that are not doing well, you pick one, two. It's a security matter. It's something that you are responsible for. And the people are pointing a finger at you and saying, this is the problem, this is the problem. Why not make a sacrifice? So the government failed to take that opportunity to make a sacrifice, drop something to the floor and let the youths work on that for a while before they are able to build on something. They were so fast. They went from SARS to SWAT, and they really disrespected the protesters with some of their actions. And then the youths, at a point, the leaderless protest actually had the advantages and the disadvantages. At the protest grounds, you would see people asking questions like, why are we even asking for the police salaries to be increased? There are some unemployed youths in the crowd here that are protesting that don't even have jobs. And we're talking about increasing salaries they really didn't get it. Some of us got it, and we knew that if the welfare of the police wasn't improved upon, the likelihood of them changing their attitude or being controlled in one way or the other was very low. So, but many people in the grounds there didn't understand it and would ask this question from time to time. So you find that we missed so many opportunities to educate people to come out of our shackles, the shackles of police brutality, because even after the protest, when the police was sent in to clamp down, the effect of the protest was completely absent. You could see videos of police people shooting directly at protesters. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. And these are the opportunities that we missed. We didn't adjust much. But the only good thing that I can say that came out of it is that the youths have found their voice and they know the power of their voices. And going forward, I think they'll be wiser to organize in such a way that the hoodlums and the other infiltrators will not be able to jump in.
That's profound. If you're just joining us, the program is House of Justice on HOJ Radio TV, giving light to life, taking justice to law. And the topic is palliatives, loot, and national security. And we're just looking at all the issues, the root causes, and where we are right now. I have been talking with E.A. Jonathan Ichaba and Chinedu Okeke, Brindi Dakun, and Comrade Abdulaziz Isa Bawa. We're going to take a quick break as we listen to Timi Dakolo remind us of the fact that we are a great nation. We will get there. We'll take a break, and when we return, it will still be House of Justice. Don't go away.
As a people with one song, with one voice, we're a nation undivided and poised. We will take us down and build our land in faith to defend what is ours. Here we are as a people with one heart for one cause. We're determined to rebuild and restore. Where freedom rise and truth prevails, our land where there's hope for us all. Our land where there's hope for us all. We'll defend our land. We believe in this nation, and we know we'll get there. We'll defend our land. We believe in Nigeria and the promise she holds, and that one day we'll shine like the sun. We're a great nation.
It's the House of Justice.
All right, Timi Dakolo there reminding us that we are all we have and that we are a great nation. This is a journey towards nationhood. We're stumbling on the path, we're picking ourselves on the path, and we are hopefully...
Sorry, Gloria, we can barely hear you.
Oh, hello, do you hear me now?
Yes.
All
Better now.
right, sorry about that. But this is a journey of nationhood, and we're stumbling on the path, picking ourselves, and hopefully we are moving forward. And we speak to finding solutions right now on the topic palliatives, loot, and national security. For some, they have described this as looters looting from the looters. But however, whatever tangent we need to look at this, the sad reality is that we have lost lives. There were protesters who were protesting not to be killed, who were actually killed. We have people who have been stampeded. We have a situation where we don't even know if there were people who were killed at Lekki toll gate or not. The government is in denial. And the governor of Lagos State, I think he accepted that one or two people were killed. And so we're beginning to unravel the mystery around it. But speaking to solutions, where do we go from here as a nation? Chinedu said that the protest seems to be, to put it in some form, like a big elephant. The protesters had all kinds of demands. So clearly, the country wasn't working for the majority, and ENSA seems to have just been a metaphor. How do we begin to build from this point and ride on the momentum of the protest to something good?
I think first and foremost, we all need to realize is like Timmy sang, we're all in this together.
Yeah.
From the president himself right down to the child begging on the streets. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
So this whole, we have unfortunately created a narrative of us versus them. Now, the us versus them happens in different subsets. So first, there's the government officials who see the rest of the people as the other, the enemy, really. They've created a place, you stay in your place. And if you dare protest and ask for your rights, you know, that's why they patronize people and say they're our children, you know, or they'll say these kids, they should be content, you know. That's why the special assistant to the president, who is obviously out of touch or definitely blind, Femi Adesina, will actually come out and tell Nigerians that it's NSAS that caused the looting, not hunger. So obviously they're out of touch. They don't know what is going on. They've created this wall. So I really hope, first, they need to stop distancing themselves from the people. You know, many of our governors, we know, those in the Middle Belt, for example, a good number of them, they're constantly not in the state. They're constantly out there. They don't walk around among the people because they're afraid of the people. And they're afraid of the people because they've created a wall among themselves. They're not with us. You know, that's why you have a president, he will go abroad for his medical treatment. You and I will sit here and be managing one hospital. Why don't we fix the hospitals here? Or they're sending their children abroad. We've seen all those pictures. Everybody, the government, all your governors, our governors, most of them, their children are not here in Nigeria schooling. Do you understand? So they've created, so there's that us versus them, one, at that level. Then their own appointees too, they're busy trying to join that one. Then even among us that are trying to fight for a better Nigeria, one of the very sad narratives and divisions I've seen is this issue of the youth versus the rest of Nigerians. And I said to somebody, I said, Mio, I'm fully in this fight. The reason when they were protesting NSAS, and I went there and I held a placard and said, stop killing our children, is because for every Nigerian youth killed, there's a grieving father, there's a grieving mother.
That's right.
There's a grieving brother, sister, auntie, uncle, everybody is affected. I mean, for goodness sake, even the Minister of Justice, all the way in Canada, an Igbo man, born Igbo man anyway, told us that they killed his relative and he couldn't get justice, even from the National Assembly.
Wow.
So nobody is exempted from this thing. Even the president's son one day, they can a mistaken case of identity, some idiot to open and shoot. So we need to understand, we're all in this together, no matter how we try and differentiate it. The other thing I see is that a lot of people are saying, oh, you youth should do this, you youth, we're all responsible. So yes, the young people have energy, they have innovation, they have a lot of things, but those who are also older, whether in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, they have lessons to share, they have history to share. Part of the reason a lot of our young people do not understand that this struggle didn't start today. So that's why they will be tweeting things like, our parents failed, our parents didn't do this. They don't understand this struggle. This struggle has been on, it's not today. But because we sat back and allowed them to strike off history from the curriculum, we're not teaching our history. So there was no historical reference point for Asaba massacre or all the different massacres that have happened, Odi, Zakibiam, all these things. They did not realize. That's why those poor children or young people, sorry, I'm even doing the same thing I'm accusing people of doing. Those young people sat at that toll gate, even though they heard soldiers were coming, because they thought that if the soldiers see them waving that flag and singing the national anthem, they will not shoot. Unfortunately, for those who knew the history, I called people who I knew were at that ground, and I told them to leave that place. Some listened, some did not. Thankfully, the ones that I know of, nothing happened to them. But not that I know that many anyway. But having said that, if they had the history of how the Nigerian army and government has consistently acted in oppressing its own people, even as far back as 1999 and before that, and the riots of Ali Mosgo and the SAP riots under Babangida, they would have known that. So they would have known that this our army, they would not hesitate to shoot at unarmed civilians. They won't.
Even when they are flagging when they are hoisting the flags and the national anthem, they don't understand that.
Because these are, when you have, if you know that as far back as 2015, the Nigerian army has been accused of killing women, children, and burying them in a mass grave. For an army or a security official who can fire on a child, that should tell you this is somebody who, if they see you waving the Nigerian flag, they're not going to care. So those are some of the things. So we need to understand, one, we're in this together, and we need to stop fighting ourselves. I feel we should give it time. Obviously, to me, all the flip-flopping and dilly-dallying of the government agencies involved, whether at the state level of this one said the army said I should come, the other one said they didn't say I should come, should tell you already that something is off. And we should put, number one, all of us, we need to begin to prioritize what is most important: human lives. We've been distracted. We're all shouting palliatives were looted, which is true. And we're not saying that people shouldn't discuss that, but we should stay on point on the question. Nigerians have been killed, whether with NSAS or during NSAS or post-NSAS. We demand accountability for those lives, and each life is important. When we begin to say each life is important, we will now begin to give ourselves the value that the Creator gave us before we started selling it off for goodness knows what. So I think that's the first step, and we need to be consistent in demanding accountability from President Muhammadu Buhari, from the governors, from the Inspector General of Police, from the Chief of Army Staff, or whoever is in charge, to say, these people are missing or they've been killed. We need justice. I will lastly say, thankfully, this is House of Justice Radio, so we understand what justice is about. We need to also understand that right now, what's happening and what has been happening, at least in many states, in your state, there's talks about a house-to-house search. In Lagos, we're seeing videos
and
of
helicopters,
the police.
by the way. In Kaduna, we've had helicopters flying around looking for Indomie and
people have been killed in southern Kaduna for how many, whatever, but there have been no helicopters. So we as a people, we need to begin to stand up and say, enough. Indomie is not more important than the human and than the Nigerian life. We need to get this in our heads. In Lagos, they've been quick to round up, whether it's 229 suspects they claim, that one they were quick to find them all and corral them into a place. Again, violating their human rights, beating them up, and parading them. You're a lawyer. And so thank God there's also another lawyer in the house. I believe it's against the law, but those are the things we're doing. And we see these things and we let it go. We should not. We should keep calling them back to what is most important. Human lives were lost. We need accountability. Whoever. In Anambra, visit the Akuzu SARS gentleman, that James Wafo. He is still on the run or he's still missing. We need to say to the IGP, you need to produce James Wafo to come and answer the case. And we need to continue to press for the IGP. If he's not going to do that, for him to be sacked. For the Chief of Army Staff, if they're not going to answer for all these people that have been killed, they should be sacked. And if President Buhari will not do it, we need to begin to ask President Buhari tough questions. and stop allowing them to treat us like slaves. We're not slaves. This is a so-called democracy. We put them to it. And we need to begin to challenge certain narratives. So you have a chief of army staff who will come on national television and tell the whole country that he is loyal to the president. He's not telling you that he's loyal to Nigeria. We should start asking questions there. You're not loyal to a person. You're loyal to the country that the person represents. So there's so many things, but I will stop there. But I say first, we need to begin to value ourselves as human beings. Because if we don't do this, when the Inspector General of Police himself leaves that place, another human being can come and shoot him, and they'll say they are being loyal to certain forces because the Inspector General of Police was walking around, they didn't like the way he looked. So it's very important. This is for everybody's protection, from the president right down to the smallest child on the street. I will stop there.
All right, Abdulaziz Issa Bawa, solutions, please, before we get to Chinedu and then Rindi, and then we see if we can take a few calls. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I have a different view. Because if we said, okay, we're going to encourage those who are actually dissatisfied with the system to mellow down because our security forces are brutal, it is not going to help. Let me take it this way. As I say, any protest that will come up, expect violence in this country, expect rampage. But it is not going to stop until the government actually finds solution to why people are not actually satisfied with her.
Can we not humanize the agitations? EA just spoke about all of us understanding that we are together in this. Government is in this. We are in this. There is no youth. There is no big. There is no small.
I understand that, but you are underrating the socio-cultural background in which some of these leaders are coming from. If the moment you underrate that, okay, you look at it as it is actually normal. Most of them, the way they are trained, the way they are supposed to lead is not actually the same. You are not thinking the same. They don't have this democratic kind of beliefs in them. Though they study it, things like that. Let me actually say this. Immediately this NSAS actually started, one of the bad response was that we are going to actually start empowering the youth. The typical youth I know in Kwani, Okonawa in Sokoto, is not the typical youth I know even in Abuja. Giving them 10,000, telling them that you're empowering them is not actually it. Empower them. Create the enabling environment. You don't come here after spending my money as school fees, learning one thing or the other, and then you tell me that you're going to give me 30,000 naira for 3 months. You are empowering me. No. All we need is enabling environment. If I grew up in this environment, I know the level of indoctrination we have had. It will be very, very difficult. We should not underrate this tax, but it lies on the government. Categorically, I will tell you, Gloria, this government will not have the solution. Because of least watch out. Their response will always be that authoritarian, trying to, that conservative means keep quiet. This is what I want you to do. But the solution all lies in them. If they can handle things, there are progressives in the north. As far back as 1950s, Americano and the rest. How did they end up? This is the same trend that is actually moving. That is why they respond to things the way they are responding to them. Let me tell you, from French Revolution to the recent 2010 Tunisia, Algeria 2019, 2020, Sudan 2018, it all got aggravated because security personnel actually involved this brutal force.
Yes.
So we should they should go back to recent history. When Algeria, they said, okay, the governor of Lagos State is saying only 2. Let me give you a statistic. Algeria, only 3 people died and 183 people were injured, out of which 112 were policemen. But that protest ended the reign of Abdulaziz Bouteflika. So if he's saying only 2, I've just given him an example. He should go and research. Algeria, only 3 people died. 3. They are even saying 2 or 3. They are not even sure they were 3. One 83 injured, 112 policemen, but it ended the reign of that very leader. And what aggravated it that even the successor, they have to fight him again because he actually tried to use what is brutal force in trying to pick out the leaders of the protesters. Then they went back to the street again. We have to look, if we handle them this way, we think we are going to subjugate them, but somebody may sprint out from the former. So all solution lies on the government, but to me,
To
I'm
learn
not
from
confident.
history, first of all.
They should learn from history.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not confident they can do it because I am from this region. I know most of them. I know they won't yield to this.
So let's hope that by just hearing us, we could break this down, moving to Chinedu in a short while. First, Nigerian government de-escalate the military force is not going to help. And turning to Chinedu, please, what's wrong with government coming out to accept that something has happened? What's wrong with government coming out to say, we are sorry, we can do this better? Is there a taboo to this kind of accepting responsibility and joining with citizens to make things better? Chinedu. Hello, Chinedu. I think you're probably muted. All right. Do we have you now? The connection is probably gone down where Chinedu is, but we'll get back to Chinedu in a short while as we try to, get him to see if we can have a situation where the government will accept responsibility and work with citizens so we can close the gap. Hello? All right, Rindy.
Yes.
Can we not have a situation where government will say, for instance, look, we accept that we've done this and this and this wrong, and we want to join with you citizens to get this and this right? Would this help us moving forward?
If we did, if we could, it will help us moving forward. But I don't think we're going to get that at the moment. And I'm going to say it because I think I align with Abdulaziz. A lot of the things that are happening here are a manifestation of the thought process that we have been fed all along the line.
Yeah.
And I also agree with E that we're all in this together because I might not have an opportunity to say anything. So let me say it as part of my own solutions that, you see, the people we find in governance today, as we've had a value system that over time has eroded to the point that some persons don't do wrong. I mean, you have had several discussions about this matter, that at some point the societies we live in are those that the reward system is for those who do the wrong things. So today we are busy talking about who is in which office and who is in what office, but all these people are members of our communities. They are our brothers, they are our uncles, and we celebrate them individually or collectively. We give them chieftaincy titles. So at what point do you think the person would think he's doing wrong when he knows that even after shooting 2 or 3 protesters or even maiming only some, he will still have to go back to his community as a hero, and tomorrow you hear them turbaning him and he is the biggest man around, and in fact he becomes the influencer of that community. So everybody now looks forward to being like him. So you see, over time we have now produced people in government that are what will I call it now? I'm looking for the word. The capacity to say sorry, it's non-existent. It's non-existent because as far as they are concerned, even when I didn't say sorry, I was celebrated. So you see, by way of solution for me, I would say that, I told somebody that let us begin to speak, as he said, and tell ourselves the truth that even if you are my brother, we will tell you that we will remind you of the time you shot people. And even if we don't hold it against your children, we will tell them that we hope you will not be like your father, because he was given a responsibility to protect people and he turned the arms on those people and he shot them. We will remind you at every point they want to give you chieftaincy title that you're not getting it because you're better than anybody in the society, but it's because the wealth you have is ill-gotten and you have used it to get chieftaincy title. And we will not fail to remind those giving you the chieftaincy title that one day we will abolish their authority so that they will even have those capacities. So you see, for me, I think when we begin to engage ourselves in the small, small units of our families and communities, then we are beginning to create leaders that will actually worry about the people. But what we have in the present circumstances, as our values have eroded, sincerely, it will be very difficult for any government, in fact, not only this one, for anyone in the immediate future coming to apologize to Nigerians. But again, I'm happy because of the way Nigerians united on one thing, and we, to the extent that we put out our voice there, I'm a very happy person. And I'm also going to say something that going forward, please let those who lost their lives, let those who got injured, let their predicament not go in vain. Let us not lose focus of this. We need a better country. We want to end SARS, not just because we want to end the police unit. We want to end a whole lot of things. We want to end bad governance. We want to entrench accountability. And we want persons that will lead us realize that in the real sense, they are just first among equals and they are there to serve us. That is for me.
Well, let's see if we can.
Sorry.
Let's
I just.
see.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Chinedu, we can hear you.
Great. Welcome back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You see, like you said, the government, the government had an opportunity to put themselves in, not in a good light because they had done something wrong, but to separate themselves from the actions of the government, of the soldiers, which particularly would have been a lie. Someone who did it, he didn't do it well. The way it was unable to empathize with the people, manner that he did not know that the soldiers went there to kill anybody with that press. You know why people were waiting for that, for the statement from the president? The main reason why people wanted to hear from the president.
Yeah.
Form of shock. In their minds, they were hoping that the president would relate with the people and say, and ask the question, who did this? Or even say, we'll find out who did. So that was what they were waiting for.
The president didn't even countenance that in his presidential speech, by the way. There wasn't any mention of the Lekki shootings.
Yeah, he lost the opportunity to win the hearts of a few, if not so many. He couldn't win anybody. He won nobody with his speech. He won over nobody, absolutely nobody that I know of. And that's another lost opportunity. They lost so many opportunities to relate with the people in such a manner that the people going forward would be able to listen to a voice from the government. If somebody says, stop, it's enough from the government, the people will not react positively to such a thing. Because at this point, at this that's why many people came out the next day to say, what has Tinubu said about the matter? What has this person or that person said about it? And that's why people like Desmond Elliott are being attacked today, because people want you to empathize with the people. And most of these politicians don't want to start on that foot because they believe that people will point a finger at them and say, you're guilty, you're part of the guilty party just because you said sorry, or just because you said, I regret that people lost their lives, and so on and so forth. So they want to distance themselves from the burden of guilt. So I think that's what is happening, and it is sad.
Oh, well, I've just been told that we are quickly running out of time. We've probably got 2 or 3 minutes, but yeah, I'll give you just a minute to wrap up on your thought before we call it a day. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I think we need to just go back to our communities now and begin to do the hard work of reaching out to the different people we know, the youth, the older people, even people we know in government. I've made it a personal point. If you're a government person and you're misbehaving and talking nonsense, I'll tell you and I'll cut you off from my circle. Because if we don't begin to ostracize these badly behaved government people, it's like what our brother said, they will come, I will be hailing them. So I don't even invite you to my house. Don't come, I don't want to see you. Don't come to my parties, don't come anything. You know, you're an enemy of the people, stay there. When you repent, we will begin to look at you very well. So, but we want to, for example, in our community, we want to begin to reach out to the youth and have dialogues with them and with other people and call everybody to play their part. So I think that's very important. And we should continue to speak up because it's the pressure that has even made us go this far. So let's not relent. It's never, ever, ever, ever giving. Let's never give up, as Mr. Churchill said. Thank you.
And on that note, I'd like to thank you, EA Jonathan Ichava, Executive Director, CESO, for being with me on House of Justice. Thank you very much. Thank you
for having me.
also, Chinedu Okeke, a youth advocate, public affairs analyst, and former editor of Urban Newspaper. Thank you for joining me from Lagos. Thank you, Chinedu.
Thank you very much.
And I'm thankful to Rindi Dakun, senior lawyer and counsel at Emmanuel Toro SAN Chambers. Thank you for being with me, Rindi. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure is always mine.
And I'm also grateful to Malam Abdulaziz Isa Bawa, a public affairs analyst and historian, for being with me on House of Justice. Thank you, Abdulaziz. Well, this is where the rubber hits the road. Government, if you have done wrong, and you know that there are a lot of things that have gone wrong, please take responsibility. And Nigerians, let's all come together and build this country because this is all that we have. We're going to sign up with a prayer from the singer Solomon Lange, who is hopeful for a new Nigeria. And God willing, I'll be back with you next week, Thursday, same time. And until then, my name is Gloria Ballason, urging you to insist on the force of law and not the law of force. Bye for now.